Ladies and gentlemen, yesterday evening, President Trump just scored the single biggest legal win of his entire political career. And no, I'm not joking. This, folks, is massive. Now, we're going to have a lot to talk about today, but to kick things off, take a look at the report.
We're getting some breaking news at this hour coming out of the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court has handed President Trump a victory, letting him and his administration use the 1798 law that historically has been employed only in wartime to swiftly deport alleged Venezuelan gang members as part of the Republican president's hardline approach to immigration, granting that administration request to lift the Washington-based U.S. judge James Boasberg's March 15th order that had temporarily blocked the summary deportations under the Alien Enemies Act.
So, folks, you hear that? The United States Supreme Court has just decided that federal judge Boasberg's injunction is now invalid and that President Trump can finally move along and invoke the Alien Enemies Act to start deporting terrorist illegal immigrant cartel gang members. Now, for a little bit more information on this entire situation, take a look at this. The Supreme Court came to their decision in a 5-4 split. Interestingly, it appears as if all 5 male justices sided in favor of President Trump, whereas all 4 female justices sided in favor of Judge Boasberg. And now, folks, keep in mind, this decision was about whether or not the President of the United States of America, the Commander-in-Chief, has the executive authority to invoke already existing legislation to detain and deport illegal immigrant terrorists from within our country. So if you want to know what these 4 women were thinking when they made their decisions in defense of illegal immigrant terrorists, I don't really know what to tell you. In my humble opinion, these 4 women are not only absolutely insane, but also thoroughly anti-American. Now, surprisingly, Chief Justice John Roberts actually voted in favor of President Trump, thank God, and I think this is actually probably the biggest shock of this entire decision. As many of you may know, Chief Justice Roberts is actually a member of a very curious invite-only club of progressive judges, of which Judge Boasberg is actually also a member. So I'd imagine that their next secret club meeting is going to be just a little bit awkward. But okay, so folks, what do you say we try to unpackage what this decision really means? Since taking office, President Trump has received injunction after injunction from radically progressive federal judges across the country, but every single time one of these issues has made its way to the Supreme Court, President Trump has won. Which means, with a 100% Supreme Court win rate, we can confidently say that everything President Trump has done so far is well within his constitutionally granted presidential authority. And as a quick reminder, so far the Supreme Court has ruled that President Trump, as the chief executive of the country, can freeze and reallocate federal funding as he sees fit. They also ruled that President Trump does, in fact, have the executive authority to cut DEI out of all federally funded institutions across the nation. And, as of yesterday evening, they ruled that President Trump has the authority to invoke the Alien Enemies Act and to deport and detain illegal immigrant terrorists that are residing within our country. And now, don't get me wrong, all of these decisions have been incredibly close, all of them 5-4 in fact, with both Justice Roberts and Justice Barrett acting completely unpredictably on pretty much every decision, but as they say, a win is a win, and ladies and gentlemen, so far, we just keep on winning. And so you know what? Here's the truth. The message that this ruling sends is that the America First agenda is full steam ahead. As time goes on, all of these hyper-partisan federal injunctions are just slowly getting overturned, which means President Trump is actually slowly ramping up in his capacity to enact the America First agenda. But so, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about how this Supreme Court ruling is actually going to change things up on a day-to-day basis. You see, under normal circumstances, the President of the United States isn't allowed to use the U.S. military to apprehend, detain, or deport illegal immigrants. However, between President Trump declaring what's gone on at our southern border as an invasion and labeling all of these illegal immigrant cartel gangs as terrorist organizations, and now, with this Supreme Court ruling, President Trump can officially invoke the Alien Enemies Act, which will allow him to use the United States military to start rooting out all of these illegal immigrants that snuck into our country during Biden's complete and total failure of a presidency. So, ladies and gentlemen, in summary, what all of this means is that pretty much the radical progressives' worst nightmare just came true. As of now, as of this Supreme Court ruling, President Trump can make full use of our United States military, including all of the resources and all of the personnel, to carry out mass apprehensions, detentions, and deportations. And as many of you know, ICE has been seriously suffering from a lack of manpower, which has been slowing down their ongoing deportation endeavor because there are just so many illegal immigrants in this country. But now, President Trump can back them up with the United States military. No questions asked. So obviously, this goes without saying, but if you're an illegal immigrant, if you haven't self-deported already, now is probably a good time to do so, to say the least. Once again, President Trump has now successfully argued that the United States has been invaded, that many of these illegal immigrant invaders are actually terrorists, and as such, are at the complete and total discretion of the United States military. And as many of you know, the United States military doesn't exactly show much discretion when dealing with terrorists. So you know what? Long gone are the days where radical progressives get to act with complete and total impunity, undermining the sovereignty of the United States and putting American lives at risk. And now, the message has been sent loud and clear: these radically progressive, unelected federal judges don't run the country. The American people run the country, and we chose President Trump to represent us. Day by day, the progressives' reign of judicial tyranny is being undone, and power is finally being given back to the American people, which is exactly how this country is supposed to operate. We are a constitutional republic, a democracy, not a judicial tyranny. And so now, after losing the Senate and the House and the Oval Office, the progressives are beginning to lose the one thing that they still had: their corrupt partisan courts, staffed with unelected judges that are hell-bent on destroying this country. The America First movement has officially taken the country back, and now it's time for all of these illegal immigrants to get the hell out of our country and go back to wherever they came from. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what we all voted for. Now, before we wrap up, I want to say real quick that I've actually made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this. So hey, if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But ladies and gentlemen, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below in the comment section and let me know what you think about all of this. Please like the video while you're down there. If you guys enjoy the daily news updates, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and of course, as always, stay safe.